One of the biggest Brexit conundrums is not about fish or immigration or sovereignty, but about fertiliser. Not just the bags of white dust in the barn, but the entire regulations, the ecosystem around what we put in our soil, as Britain considers deeper alignment with the EU on agri-food standards, fertilisers and pesticides have become a new flashpoint. For some, this is a betrayal of Brexit's promises. For others, it's a long overdue return to sanity. For those who took advantage of Brexit to move on to other forms of available fertiliser, particularly given the problems of accessing fertiliser because of the Ukraine war, these people are going to face a serious bottleneck and serious financial crises, as people have already complained. I did a piece about this the other day, and I've since had talks with people about the fertiliser problem, and so this is sort of redress chat about I wouldn't want to give the wrong impression. Labour's proposed reset about the EU includes dynamic alignment on sanitary and phytosanitary standards. And that means Britain would shadow the EU rules on food safety, animal health, and crucially pesticide and fertiliser use. And around 30 chemical agents currently used by British farmers would be banned under this regime, including treatments for potato blight and fungal infections. And Brexiteers have therefore cried foul. They argue this is regulatory backsliding, a surrender of sovereignty and a blow to productivity. But the irony is stark. These substances were never meant to be permanent tools. They were emergency authorisations granted post-Brexit, used liberally and often without proper scientific scrutiny. And meanwhile, the EU courts have ruled such authorisations illegal. So here's the core contradiction. Many farmers who championed Brexit did so on the promise of cutting red tape and finding new markets. But over 2/3 of UK agri-food exports still go to the EU. To access that market, they must meet EU standards, which means the freedom to diverge comes at the cost of losing your customer base. A fungicide that works wonders on your wheat means little if Brussels bars your grain. Moreover, while UK farmers must pay visa fees for seasonal workers and grapple with national insurance hikes, their EU competitors benefit from seamless movement, subsidies, and the scale of a single market. Mineral and organic fertilisers aren't just about yield, they're about health. And heavy metals like cadmium, pharmaceutical residues, parthenogens, even microplastics can leach into food and water. And the EU, for all its regulatory caution, has acted to limit these containments. Britain, by contrast, still lacks systemic and systematic monitoring. So the environmental consequences are grave. Overuse of synthetic fertilisers is the leading cause of nutrient pollution in European water bodies. It disrupts ecosystems, it reduces biodiversity, and poses real public health risks. The argument that stricter rules will harm British farming misses the point. Unsustainable farming is actually harming British farming by degrading the very soil that it relies on. Critics of Labour's deal ignore one vital truth. The EU standards were not arbitrary. They were built on decades of science, on caution and shared learning. Britain once helped to shape these standards, and stepping outside that club didn't give us more control. It left us with fewer allies and fewer tools. Take Northern Ireland. Still in the EU regulatory orbit, it hasn't faced the same agricultural turbulence as mainland Britain. Nor has Ireland, which notably weathered recent potato blight outbreaks without banned chemicals in question. The secret: crop rotation, resistant varieties, and investment in resilient systems, not chemical crutches. The real threat is not EU rules, it's the economic model behind much of British farming, particularly the rise of mega farms in Britain which require chemical-heavy input to function. Think of Cranswick's proposed mega site housing over 700,000 chickens or 14,000 pigs, the same site recently exposed for a grotesque mistreatment of piglets, throwing them against a wall. These systems produce more meat more cheaply, but at what cost? Food ultimately is not just a commodity, it's a public good. Our soil, our rivers, our biodiversity, these are national treasures, sacrificing them to keep costs low or exports flowing is a false economy. So, is there a fertiliser threat in the Brexit reset? Yes, but not the one populist headlines have warned about, not the one that was screamed about on the media a few days ago. And the threat, and not the one, incidentally, that I fell victim to the to that particular feed. No, it's a little bit of thought, and I know I was wrong. The threat lies in pretending that divergence from high standards is sustainable. The threat is in regulatory fantasy dressed up as freedom. The threat is in going it alone. The future is in being aligned to the people to whom we're going to be selling our produce. So if our produce doesn't meet their standards, we can't sell. It doesn't matter how much we grow, and it doesn't matter how badly we treat our land. In order to grow more, we can't sell it. Not that way. British farmers are not Luddites. Many want science-led, soil-friendly, animal-respecting policies. What they need is clarity, support, and a level playing field. Not panic over lost pesticides. The Brexit dividend was supposed to be about control, but control without responsibility is just chaos. The EU rules may be complex, sometimes bureaucratic, but they are rooted in a vision. Food that feeds not just a stomach, but a society, and Britain would do well to remember that. We need to focus on stuff that we can actually sell. We need to grow what works. And we need to make sure that our soil continues to grow and to nurture the food that we're planting.